The spotted owl has long been a symbol of the struggle between conservationists and the economy. Loggers who risk losing work ask, how can you save a bird at the expense of people's jobs? But despite the protection the bird received, its numbers are declining, which leaves environmentalists wondering what's really going on. Here's Brian Rooney.
Deep in the old-growth forest of Oregon, researcher Dave Wiens uses a radio antenna to find a northern spotted owl that lives around here somewhere.
So you picked up a bird. I picked up a bird and I'm just kind of honing in on the signal strength, which direction.
The owl has been fitted with a small transmitter that makes it easy, relatively easy, to track and find him.
Thinking he's high up in a tree and he's going to be down behind this hill.
Even with a radio signal, you've got to beat the bushes to find a spotted owl camouflaged among these trees. And then there he is, way up there, barely distinguishable from the bark of a limb, occasionally hooting at his visitors. He just stares right back at you. The northern spotted owl is the focus of one of the most dramatic acts of environmental protection in U.S. history. 24.5 million acres of land set aside for the owl's survival. But now, approaching 20 years later, the number of these owls in northwest forests is still slowly dropping, roughly 4% a year.
If the spotted owls decline at their current rate, how long before they're not here?
In the northern part of the range, if we continue to see the kinds of declines that we've seen in the last couple of analyses we've done, the picture is pretty pessimistic.
It was 1992 when the federal government protected those millions of acres in Washington, Oregon, and California. It was huge. Immediately, Northwest loggers lost work. Lumber businesses were shuttered. The whole Northwest economy was hurt. And the spotted owl, ever since, has been the target of derision by some people who make their living off the forest.
The debate was always focused on the owls themselves, but it was really about something much bigger than that. It was about the health of the entire forest. If you were losing the owls, were you also losing things like these trees that were a couple hundred years old and everything else that lived among them?
Destruction of old-growth forest on federal land stopped, but
there's still habitat loss going on as a result of fires, harvest on non-federal lands. So there's still habitat issues. That hasn't gone away.
On a map, the protected areas are a checkerboard that is either logged or left to nature. Patches of clear-cut land and young industrial forest interrupt the old-growth forest where the spotted owl likes to live. And one more problem, the arrival of the barred owl, a bigger and tougher bird that may be pushing the spotted owl off its turf.
You come out here about 10 years ago and you'd have a really hard time finding a barred owl out here. But, and you know, 25, 30 years ago, there were virtually no barred owls in this area.
In some areas, barred owls dominate where spotted owls once nested.
You just don't know what happens to them.
Despite all the efforts by man, it may be nature that decides what happens to the spotted owl.
We had hoped early on that if we just did a good job of managing habitat, the problem would be solved. The barred owl has thrown a big monkey wrench into that whole equation.
Now some loggers ask, why preserve so much forest if it's not saving the spotted owl? In August, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service reduced the amount of what's called critical habitat by more than 1.5 million acres, sparking dissent even from within the ranks.
I don't quite understand how you can propose to reduce the habitat protection for a species when it's declining and hope to ever recover it.
Here she comes.
In some areas, the number of spotted owls is so small that inbreeding threatens to further deteriorate the species. But the owls do still range from Canada to Mexico, their unreadable faces refusing to give an easy answer for how to save this bird. For Focus Earth, Brian Rooney, Veneta, Oregon.
And up next, they've been